Hi everyone, welcome to this Forefront webinar. I'm Dr. Claire Jonas. I'm one of the Research Communications Officers at Alzheimer's Society, and I'm going to be hosting today. Firstly, Shireen Iota and Alan Richardson, who are going to talk about involving people affected by dementia in research. Would you like to introduce yourselves?
Hi everyone, I'm Cherie. I'm the Research Engagement Officer at the Alzheimer's Society. And Alan?
Yeah, good afternoon everybody. I'm Alan Richardson and I'm from Weston-super-Mare down on the coast. I'm a Research Network volunteer and also a local volunteer representative for the Alzheimer's Society.
Thank you both very much.
Thanks, Claire. Sorry.
It's all right. I'm just going to say, if anyone would like to ask any questions, please put them in the Q&A during Cherie and Alan's presentation, and we'll have a few minutes for questions with them before Gemma's talk later. You will also have the opportunity, of course, to ask questions once the talk is over through the Q&A box if you'd prefer to do that. And you can do that through YouTube as well if you're watching us live on YouTube. All right, go ahead.
Great. So the first bit's going to be from me, and then me and Alan are going to have a conversation about his involvement. So let me just share my screen. Hopefully you can all see that. Okay, so yes, so I'm Cherie, and just a little background about me. I'm the Research Engagement Officer at the Alzheimer's Society, and what I do is make sure people affected by dementia are involved in all aspects of our research process. So a little bit about my background. I have a neuroscience master's, and during my degree and a little bit of my master's, I volunteered and worked as a carer. So my master's obviously gave me that interest in science, that the research, and I love research due to that. But working in care homes and like home visits and sometimes hospitals really opened my eyes to the reality of what I was studying and how we really need to connect both researchers and the people living this reality together. So this, of course, led me to the society, and I love that my role is focused on that. So why is patient and public involvement so important? Well, involving people affected by dementia ensures that the research is focused on what matters most to them. And this should be from the start of the research development process all the way throughout the project and through to implementation. This ensures that your research is of a high quality and it's more relevant for those people, and therefore make sure that it's more likely to be funded. So researchers are always being asked by many funders to work with people in all stages of research. So the first stage is the planning. So what questions are important? What do they want? What do the people want? What do they want to be addressed? And that's what you should be looking at when you start planning. The next is the design. So help with the study design and the protocol. So kind of with recruitment and how to retain participants. The next ones are implementation and dissemination. So this is kind of identifying and sharing the benefits of the research. And it's really good to have people affected by dementia communicating those results, because that's how you get through to the public, and that's how they start to understand the research. Another thing is obviously at the end with evaluating your results, there's some things that you might not have spotted in your results that a person affected by dementia would. So like the nuances in your results that could be taken further and can be researched further. So how do we do it at the society? So we have our research network, and Alan is one of our research network volunteers. And our research network is made up of about 350 people affected by dementia. And so everyone has their own personal experience of dementia, either by being a carer, was a former carer, or as a person living with dementia. And the main roles of our network are the funding program, monitoring, and we also have our partnerships. What every person in the network does is our funding program. So they get involved. So when we open a funding round, and we're currently in one now, and our research and volunteers are really busy, and they get involved in our reviews. So they do all our lay reviews for our applicants. And this ensures that the research we fund is not only the best quality, but it's also meaningful and impactful for them. The next role is monitoring. So all the projects that are funded by us are assigned 2 to 3 monitors. And this is a really unique and great role that we do as a society. And the monitors have meetings every kind of 6 months to a year. And this is a conversation with the researchers about how their project is going and if they need any guidance from the society. But most importantly, it ensures that PPI involvement is continued throughout the project. So all our funded researchers can ask for involvement from our research network during their project, and we will share these involvement opportunities with them. But they have their monitors to speak to if they ever need any kind of detailed guidance at any point of their study. The next thing is obviously all our partnerships. So as you can imagine, we get lots of requests from researchers and organizations for PPI involvement. And these are our partnerships. So they come to us and we can share those involvement opportunities to our research network. And this can be, I don't know, working with them to prioritize research, offering advice as members of a steering group, developing research materials, or maybe like interviews with research participants. And there's lots more that they do. Outside of the network, we've got Dementia Voice, and Dementia Voice offers opportunities to people affected by dementia to use their personal experience to help shape the work at the Alzheimer's Society. So I know there's a large pool of the people in Dementia Voice that are interested in research that researchers can go to. As well as Join Dementia Research. We're one of the partners running this, and this is a database that people can sign up to, where research can find people that they need for studies. And we at the Society are really working on increasing the number of people that join this database and making sure that lots of people living with dementia join this database so that we can, focus on those vital studies and run them. So how does patient and public involvement add value to research? So number one, it helps focus research on the priority areas. So for example, if you're looking at 2 types of treatment and they've got different administrating methods, you would ask people what they prefer and you focus your research on what people prefer. Next is motivation for researchers. So I know that, a master's doesn't really even scratch the surface really, but prepping for research, both in a lab or a kind of data analysis, that can get quite long and can be quite mundane. But having that communication with people that you're doing that for is such a good motivator. And I know that while I was doing my project, being a carer alongside that really helped motivate me. Number 3 is building your communication skills. So communicating your research to the general public and not just other researchers is so important, and that's how you ensure it gets to them and resonates with them. So having this involvement from the start of your project planning is so helpful to build your communication skills. Number 4 is an opportunity to gain new insights. I mentioned this before, but everyone's experience is so different, and I've definitely found that speaking to members of the research network, you'll definitely gain new insights from people as their priorities can be so different, and that could add to your research because you can find a new insight that you should be looking into, or maybe it might show you that there's something that's worth considering, worth changing. And number 5, last but not least, is linking with patient organizations and funders. So I know from speaking to the research network that if you involve people affected by dementia, this is a brilliant networking opportunity as well. And you'll hear this from Alan when he speaks, but the volunteers are involved in so many different organizations. And if you want to kind of get that link with not just the society, but with other organizations that they're involved with, it's so great to involve people affected by dementia in your research at all stages. So just really quickly before we speak to Alan, what do our volunteers think? Well, they love it. They love getting involved in research. The Research Network loves everything research, really. And I'm just going to read this quotes to you. So the first one, it has been a fantastic opportunity to meet with and get to know some of the most eminent researchers in dementia, and to have the opportunity to question their thinking behind research projects and to hear them acknowledge the important role played by lay perspectives. The reality check. The next one, I carefully read all the research submissions and have enjoyed asking research team questions to help improve or clarify their final submissions, as well as ranking their likely impact in relation to others' proposals. So yeah, as you can see, our volunteers love it, but we're going to hear it straight from one of our volunteers. Let me just stop my screen share. Alan, if you come off mute. Brilliant. Hi, Alan.
Hi, Shireen.
Do you want to just introduce yourself and kind of tell us a little bit about your background and why you joined the research network and things like that?
Certainly. Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. Yeah, I'm Alan Richardson. I was a former carer for my late mother who lived with dementia and was a carer for 15 years. And this went through right through to end of life. I didn't really realise to start with that I could have got involved in research when I was caring. And that's one of the things that I've really found that has developed over the last 5-10 years. PPI to me was something new to start with, and my first experience was we used to have carers come in that provided a service during the latter part of the last 2 or 3 years of my mother's life. And those carers, I used to think, oh, they're really, really good. The people that are coming in to help us in our journey. And I always like to think about it as a railway journey. And not long after my late mother passed away, which was at home, I went into the carers organisation and said, I'd like to give you 658 hours of my time. They looked at me, 658 hours. That's a strange number. And I said, that's the amount of hours that you provided for me to have a break over the last few years. And I'd like to give that time back to you. Now, 12 years on, I'm still involved in volunteering. And in the first year of volunteering, I joined the outreach team for the carers organisation. And as part of that, we linked in partnership with other organisations for events that we had. That included at the time something called the Primary Care Trust. And the Primary Care Trust wanted to include carers and people with certain experiences in what they were doing. And I remember going along to an event and where they asked me, would you like to join our communications committee? Because we'd like to hear firsthand from people. So that was the first sort of experience. Later on, I'll be able to give some of the questions, let you know some of the things. But that sort of carried on. And I got involved as a dementia friend for the Alzheimer's Society. And when that happened as well, I actually got involved, believe it or not, with the General Medical Council, because someone was at one of the events that I was at. They approached me afterwards and said, and this was back in 2015, we'd like someone to write a blog for us for Carers Week. So this was some of the first experiences of being involved and getting involved with patient and public involvement and meeting very many people.
Oh, amazing. I think you've mentioned Join Dementia Research to me before. Can you tell me a bit more about your experience working with Join Dementia Research?
Yeah, certainly. When I was a carer, I used to keep calendars, and I kept calendars of what the condition was. And I thought, one day, maybe I'll be able to share them. It was my GP, my doctor, that suggested to log down all the different changes in condition that my late mother had, whether it was eating, nutrition, or other things. So I kept those calendars. And then one day in 2015, I went along to an event in Bristol. And when I went along there was a stand from Join Dementia Research there. And I thought, Join Dementia Research. And I found out they were a partner with the Alzheimer's Society. And so I actually signed up there and then to join Dementia Research. Things spiraled on a little bit from there. And eventually they invited me the following year it was, to go and speak at an event for them in London for people that were across the United Kingdom. And that was really fascinating. And then another invitation came forward where I joined with someone that I didn't know on a stage in a hotel in London, and we were talking about our experiences. My experiences, it's fair to say, were fairly positive during our journey. I still call it a journey. The other person had other types of experience, but we never met before, and we were a double act on the stage to start with. So that made me think, oh, this is something I'd really like to get involved with. And then that sort of developed into other meetings. And there were other sort of projects as well, which included, as people would know on this call, qualitative research, quantitative research, and also even looking at the new brochure that they were going to bring out to promote Join Dementia Research.
Oh, wow. Interesting. So, how have you been involved kind of with the Alzheimer's Society and our research network? Because it was from JDR that led you to us, wasn't it?
That is correct. Yeah, you're quite right, Sheree. Um, I always think sometimes it's coincidence that happens as well. Um, Other people, say Dementia Friends came out. I spoke about that, and that was in 2014, and that was something that was launched by the Alzheimer's Society. And I went along to an event there and handing out Dementia Friends information and doing a session. And someone that was there invited me to go to a conference. One of the Alzheimer's managers invited me to go to a conference, and it was to speak at an end of life regional event down in the southwest of England, which I duly did. And I turned out to be the closing speaker. But that was something that I thought, you know what, we're really going to enjoy this, because for the last 12, 14 years, I haven't been able to do very much. Now my time was mine to choose to do the things in the right way. The carers organisation I was involved with, we actually used to invite the Alzheimer's Society to come along to our events as well, because we were funded in a certain way. The Alzheimer's Society were funded it in a slightly different way. And so I got to meet the service manager for the local Alzheimer's Society. And then she turned around to me one day and said, would you like to join us as a local volunteer representative? And we were actually, at that time, our carers organisation had moved into the same building as the Alzheimer's Society were. It was like upstairs, downstairs, and that sort of happened. So that's how a link developed there. And I became a local volunteer representative, and certain invitations came up as well. And I was very fortunate in 2017 to win a place in Dementia Friends at the annual Alzheimer's conference, which was in London. I went along to the conference and saw these posters that were displayed around the room, chatted to some of the researchers that were there, and then we went in for the meal. And sitting on the table, I sat with someone that lived with dementia, a person that had dementia. I sat with someone that turned out to be a coordinator for the research network, and a number of PhD students. And those people were from Scotland, someone from Scotland, and we got chatting, and I thought, you know what, they share the same passion as I do. So it was really interesting. And then after the meal, when we were circulating, I bumped into someone that I'd met in April of that year at another event, and he was a research network volunteer for the society. He then introduced me to his coordinator, and that same evening, I said, oh yeah, I think I'd like to join. And so they contacted the society for me, and then I subsequently joined the research network within a month of that. So it was back in 2017.
Oh, that's great. That's brilliant. So would you say when you were sat down with the researchers, and obviously research network volunteer and the person living with dementia, was it the researcher's passion? Was that what kind of led you to want to be more involved in research?
It certainly was.
Yeah.
And the other thing was, it would give me an opportunity to use those calendars that I've kept. In fact, I've got one of them alongside me now. To everybody, this is an ordinary calendar. This is 2004. I realise it's come on back to front on the stage, but in there, it's actually got the codes that I used to write down, and those codes were on the moods, how things were on the day, and that sort of thing. And I discussed that with a couple of the PhDs as well, and they said, that's really, really useful information. You've got to share that.
Yeah.
And within 6 weeks, someone from Southampton that I met was in touch with me, came up to my hometown. I managed to get hold of a room in a local hotel for us to use with equipment, and she actually studied the calendars and took them back to use them in one of her studies.
Oh, wow. Yeah. It shows that link, doesn't it? That link between meeting researchers and how they can help you, but also how you can help them as well. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
So what roles have you done within the research network then?
within the network, I'd say the induction was very good when I went to start with the induction of the network. I heard you talking earlier on about lay reviewing, so that's looking at applications that are coming in, and from that you can develop into monitoring, so being allocated to projects as well. And then subsequently, an opportunity arose to be part of, when you were talking earlier on, I think you mentioned about grant advisory panel, and also then subsequently to what they call the grant advisory board, which includes people that are monitors, includes professionals, as well as some of the staff from the research. So once again, I think of it like a journey on a railway line, and on that railway line we get on and off, and other people are getting on all the time. And my journey has started at one end, and I'm working my way all up through that railway line.
Yeah.
Meeting other people. And most importantly, being treated equally. And I think that also is a really, really good side of things, to be able to have an equal voice.
So why did you choose to be a monitor?
Once again, this will go back, I may go back a couple of times, I go back again. It was meeting these people at that conference, because two of the people that I actually met were on projects. One of them was on a project to do with nutrition. And we were always taught when I was caring by the nursing team that used to come in as well, that nutrition was so important for people. And I happened to discuss that with this person with the post. And then some of the other posters were about things that I thought they really appealed to me. And then as you discover the applications that come in, we get an opportunity as well to try to be one of the monitors for a certain type of project. And I've been probably fairly fortunate. Some of the projects that I've been on have met some of the things that I really felt a passion for, and that I know some of the other people I've spoken to had that passion. And I must say the monitoring, as you've said, can be 6 monthly, 12 monthly, and some of the people keep in touch with us in between as well. And even during this period that we've had about not meeting face to face and things like that, we've had virtual meetings. Yeah. Virtual meetings were really new to me. Zoom was new to me. Yeah. All the way along, I've had support from people to help me to fit in with how some of the modern technology is going.
Yeah, that's brilliant. What have you enjoyed about monitoring? Are there any specific projects that you feel that you've really enjoyed? Any researchers that you've worked with?
Yes. I mean, the one project I'm particularly on, that's just coming to its. We had our final meeting about 6-8 weeks ago. Was to do with strokes and dementia, and that was a joint project by 2 universities, which was Sheffield and Newcastle, and I learned from that. They learned from me as well. That's the important thing. People with strokes, sometimes they have strokes, sometimes they have something called TIAs, transient ischemic attacks. And I learned the difference between those by being on this project. But the interesting thing was how I was able to say how I managed as being one of those 3 monitors, because there's always 3 monitors, and to spot signs. We always talk to spot signs, and you can actually spot signs. And one of the things one of the professors actually explained was how some parts heal and some parts don't, and that's why you have the difference between strokes and the TIAs. Another thing that was really close to my heart, and I happen to be on as well, is the Society of funding someone to do with on a continence project. And continence is a real big issue for people. You speak to many carers or anyone that lives with dementia, and it's like the same. It's a railway journey, as I was talking about before. You start on the mild stage, and then things gradually progress. An opportunity arose to be a monitor on a continence project. Ironically, at Southampton, which is one of the places I got involved with someone in the early days. What absolutely amazed me was going to the first meeting there and meeting up with one of the other monitors. We went into the the venue, which was in the hotel, in the hospital. And then we went into there. There were all these continence products laid around the room. And I think if I remember rightly, there were nearly 100 different types.
Mm.
And I would say that most people, when they speak to people, and continence can be to do with day-to-day life, it can be to do with home care, it can be to do with care homes and things like that as well. And I've learned so much from that. But we were very fortunate when I was caring, because we developed a very good relationship in our area with the person that was the continence advisor. Yes, you learned about the different strengths. One of the things that I was able to share on when we're talking about the continence was how, with my late mother, she actually never objected to the fact the care I was giving for her, because I used to explain to her that I'm a carer, and I'm also your son. So at different times, that's how I'm going to be dealing with things. But she never sort of objected. Yeah, sorry. And then there's another one, which was continuing compassion and care for carers. I was a carer, and that compassion I know, and the project on that will be really, really important.
Definitely, yeah. So I know you've been involved as a speaker, presenting kind of dementia research in various events with the society. What was your experience of this, and how do you feel, you as a person affected by dementia, you as a former carer, communicating this research to other people? How do you feel that went, and what was your experience of that?
Oh, I think it's been an amazing experience to have the opportunity to do, and they are actually one of the events that I sort of went to was speaking at a conference back in 2018, which was attended by the public, people with dementia, and was attended by professionals and things like that as well. And it was through on Dementia Action Week, which there's a Dementia Action Week every year, and I had that sort of opportunity to be able to speak about research for that. Another one was an event. It's going to sound different because I do stuff for fundraising as well. Able to share. People want to know, well, how are our funds being used and things like that. And this was something that's called the National Refuse Collection Championships. It was held in my hometown on the seafront, and I was invited to go along and with some of the team, and we had a stand on the day. But then someone turned around and said, "Could you introduce the afternoon session?" And there was lots of people on the seafront, and there was all the crews that were doing such hard work, and I really enjoyed that opportunity, and it gave an opportunity as well to say thank you to those people that were actually, to see them pushing these big dustbins up and down the seafront and that sort of thing, and it's become a really, really big sort of event, and to acknowledge and say thank you to them. I've been along to an indoor event at a football club, one of the championship football clubs, where an organisation were actually having an annual meeting, and they were having their dinner, and they were making the society their charity, and I turned out to be the opening speaker, and then we had an after dinner speaker as well. And I'm afraid my clock's chiming in the background. I must apologise if that's coming out. It shows that this is being done sort of live. But speaking there and speaking to people that were, I thought it was really great because they were thinking about the society, and they wanted to know and they wanted to understand the things that we were doing. One of the other things, it was one of my friends I met 30 years on from an event I went to for the Alzheimer's Society. And I hadn't seen this chap for 30 years. So it turned out his wife had dementia. It was on an event. It was on another event on the seafront at Weston. And he came in and spoke to me. And we hadn't seen one another for 30 years. We worked in the same industry. And he said, I wish something would happen about research. And I said to him, he said, it's not going to happen for me and my good lady. I said, and I made this promise. His name is John. And I said, John, I promise you, I will get involved. So I contribute to him as well, because he's no longer with us. But it's these coincidences and part of that journey that is happening.
Yeah. So from your perspective, why do you think patient and public involvement is so important in dementia research?
I think it's a two-way thing. I think involving people, and the more people that can sort of get together, I think is so important. And I say I showed the calendars that I actually had, but one of the things, some of the things that I've been thinking about is, as I now say, 12 years on from my first involvement, and maybe people thought, health professionals, how do they get involved? Researchers, how can we actually get involved with it? What I've always found is people have wanted to listen, they've wanted to be involved, they've wanted to be able to understand, and that's from both sides. And that's what I believe is so really important. And that's really, I think it's a privilege to be involved with people that have got that as a career, with our society, and with other organisations in partnership that are looking to make a difference.
Yeah, 100%. What would you say to researchers looking to involve people affected by dementia in their research? Like maybe if they're struggling to find people, what would you say to them, how best to go about it, really?
I like to think of it as a traffic light. You think of a set of traffic lights. There's red, there's amber, and there's green. Green is for go, amber is for maybe, and red is for stop. And I'd like to think that people think, stop, look, and listen. How can someone get involved? Maybe if we talk to people about the level of involvement, and I've found that some of the researchers I've been involved with as well, I'm still dealing with them now after they've left the things that they're doing with the society. So their projects have come, other people have come to them. So I've met them over the last 7 or 8 years or so. And PPI can be really good. And I would say come to the organisers, come to the Alzheimer's Society, come to somewhere, because you mentioned Dementia Voice earlier on. I have become part of Dementia Voice, and that's how these opportunities for speaking sort of crop up. And they also happen for outside organisations as well, where they're having an event. A particular event I remember was being invited along to something in Bristol by a neurologist, and would you like to come along, join us and have a display? Oh, by the way, the week before, I'm going to BBC Radio Bristol to be on their Saturday morning programme. We've got an hour. Would you like to come along with me? I hadn't met the neurologist. I was going along to an event with people that I didn't necessarily know. Yes, I'll go along. The presenter on that was quite interesting when I spoke about the calendars. And I said, well, I'm going to be taking them to the event in a couple of weeks' time. He said, you've got to share that. You've got to have, call that your living diary. And he's actually a presenter on Countdown. He was on Countdown. He was one of the literary people that looked up all that sort of thing. And that stuck with me as well. And I think a lot of people have got their experiences. What I particularly like is the fact that when you're involved, and even the society leaflet, when we get involved with it, is former carers. Because former carers have come through that experience. And I've met, since I've been with the research network, I've met carers, former carers, people with dementia, researchers, staff, professionals. And another expression is, I think we're in it together. And I like to think that together we can make a difference.
Yeah, 100%. And just with our research network, we've recently reopened applications, and if anyone here knows anyone that'd be interested, that'd be great. But what would you say to a person affected by dementia who's thinking of joining the research network and, you know, maybe just debating it in their heads?
Come along, speak to someone. You might want to speak to someone else. I've been involved with a dementia-friendly community, and we used to have regular meetings. And we used to, when we had those meetings, we'd have 15 to 20 people that were along to this meeting that were professionals, even included emergency services and things like that. We used to sit around the table, and we invited someone that had dementia to sit with us. We didn't introduce ourselves at the start. Halfway through the conversations that we were having, and everybody did some feeding, we then introduced the people. And I can remember seeing the face of some of the people that were there, the expressions when one of the people chimed up and said, I'm P and I've got dementia. Now, sat around that table, you wouldn't have known that. So it didn't put any pressure on that person. And I don't think, I really wish that we'd been able to do something here, but my period was 1995 to 2009 with my late mother. I would have loved someone to have come in because she was a sociable person. We spoke to her as if things were normal as much as we could. And I think that can be the same for people with dementia. I've got quite a few friends now that actually live with dementia. And I could walk down the street with someone, not that they necessarily have anywhere, with someone with dementia. And if you've got an arm in a sling, people know that you've harmed your arm. If you're walking with someone else, you don't necessarily know. It's only something that may happen to that person. But the fact that you can be part of a voice, you can be part of research, and you can, with us all, be in it together.
Yeah, 100%. Thank you, Alan. If there's any questions, Claire, have there been any questions come up?
Hello. No, we haven't had any questions yet, so please do type them into the Q&A box. But I have a couple. So firstly, for Alan, I was curious about when you think you've had the most impact as a Research Network volunteer. I can imagine there might be quite a lot of situations, but do you feel like you've really sort of encouraged a researcher to go into the right direction or corrected a misconception that they've had that's been particularly important?
Yeah, I can remember connecting on one of the social media channels. I won't mention which social media channel it was, but it begins with the letter T. And this person happened to be a researcher who I'd never met. And she was a Dementia Friends champion, the same as I was. And she was looking to have PPI in a project that she was doing. And at that stage, she wasn't someone that was doing an Alzheimer's Society project. We linked. We're still linking 5 years on. We met at one of the conferences 2 years ago. And in fact, they've made me an honorary member of they've set up a volunteer fundraising group as well. And they made me an honorary member of their fundraising group. That's in a different part of the country. That's up in Newcastle. So, and there's been other people as well that, with patient and public involvement, who wanted possibly to speak to someone that's been involved in it. And that may be a way, if someone is thinking, please come to the society or please come to another partner or whatever, and say, well, can I speak to someone? Just to sort of see, just get that understanding. I think I've done 6 in this year at different things, guesting for someone's PPI when they've been giving a talk to people.
Oh, that's fantastic. So you've got not only this kind of formal involvement in the Research Network, but it's also opened up more of these like one-off or informal opportunities that can lead to, oh, that's really lovely. It's like a virtuous circle, I think is probably nice.
Yeah, and I just remember the 2 Research Network volunteers that I met originally back in 2017. They've become great friends of mine since then.
Oh, that's lovely. Yeah, it's always nice to have people who understand your circumstances on a personal level in your life. Thank you. Cherie, I know obviously we work together. I know recently you've been working on increasing the sort of diversity of the perspectives that Research Network volunteers bring to that process. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so me and Anna, my manager in the team, we're really looking to increase the diversity of the Research Network, just so we can have, a variety of views and perspectives within our network and informing the researchers that we fund, and obviously in the partnerships I spoke about, other researchers and other organizations. So a big call out that we're looking at is increasing the people living with dementia in our Research Network, as well as increasing the ethnic variety of people, and also the LGBTQ+ community. So if if anyone on this call or anyone on the YouTube knows anyone that would be really keen to join, was a former carer or is a current carer, who'd love to join, we would love to hear those voices and share them, and have them in our research network and share those opinions and those, you know, experiences with our researchers as well. So yeah, thanks for asking that, Claire.
No worries. I just thought good opportunity to talk about that. Oh yes, and of course, people with a diagnosis of dementia as well. So if you are a carer, a former carer, or someone living with a diagnosis of dementia, then you're very welcome to join the research network.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't think we've had any more questions come in. Just checking the Q&A. No, it doesn't look like it. So I think what we'll do then is we'll have a couple of minutes comfort break before we start Gemma's talk. So hopefully see you back here at 15:15 on the dot.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank
Thanks,
you
everyone.
guys so much.
Thank you so much, Alan. Thanks.
It was a pleasure. Really enjoyed that. And thank you as well, Claire.